Hi, Rebecca. How are you? How's it going?
Hi, Asim. I'm great, thank you. How are yourself?
Very good, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you so much for being a part of our podcast today. I really appreciate it. And just to give everybody context, just taking it back, me and Rebecca met a few months ago. We were both guest speakers in Warwick University, and that's when I got to know Rebecca. She's an amazing person. I've been trying to get in touch with Rebecca, all this couple of months, but obviously she's a founder, she's a businesswoman, she's obviously busy, but finally I've got hold of her, and now we are here trying to be as open and as candid as possible, obviously, which is required these days during this whole unfortunate crisis of events that we are all facing collectively. So hopefully this conversation is going to bring about a little bit of positivity in our day-to-day life, and you'll also get to know a little bit more about Rebecca and her journey. So once again, thank you so much, Rebecca, for being a part of this podcast.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Asim. I'm glad to be here.
Perfect. All right, Rebecca, before we get into the questions, can you give us a little bit about yourself? And you are the founder of Nordic Cuddle. So a little bit about Nordic Cuddle as well, and how did the whole journey start?
Sure. So yes, I'm a founder and CEO of a London-based cuddle therapy company called Nordic Cuddle, and we provide platonic touch that is provided in a safe environment. Touch obviously includes consent from both parties, so that's basically the core of our practice, because many people might immediately think like, okay, so how do you do cuddling in a safe container? So so we provide that. We also have a training. So we train people. Currently we have 15 practitioners who are usually busy with session, but obviously during the COVID-19, touch is more or less banned by the government. We are focusing on other stuff. Myself, I come from Finland, from Helsinki, and I moved to UK about 3-4 years ago. And I've been very excited to be on my journey here. And obviously connecting with other inspiring people and entrepreneurs such as Asim. That's me in a nutshell.
Well, thank you so much. I was really intrigued and really interested when I first met you, obviously a few months ago. Not just by your business, obviously by you as well. And one of the fundamental reasons is because I'm born Indian, but lived all my life in Dubai. So I'm also pretty international, and I've also moved to London because I saw the opportunity in London. So I saw some sort of synergy between us. So I was obviously intrigued by you as well. But coming back to Nordic Cuddle, and you spoke about platonic touch. Can you give us maybe a little bit of science behind that as well, and how it impacts our mood levels and anxiety and stress and all that?
Absolutely. Touch it's first of all the most prominent sense that we have. It's the first sense to develop whilst we're in the womb as a little children. But on the other hand, it's probably the least academically researched. However, there is already mountains of evidence behind the health benefits of safe touch. And like shortly said, those include reduced heart rate, reduced blood pressure, elevated levels of good hormones, including serotonin, oxytocin, which helps you to feel more bonded with one another. It also obviously elevates your mood, so makes you feel happier, strengthens your immune system. So the more we get touch, the less, ironically, we're actually to get cold through viruses and so on. So I obviously find this quite interesting as a time period, because we are obviously a guide advised to not touch. But on the other hand, if we are deprived from touch for a long times of period, that certainly has an impact on our immune system as well.
Yeah, so it is, like you said, really ironic as well, because now we're asked not to touch, but perhaps in the grand scheme of things, it is the complete opposite. Hopefully, like everything else in life, we will get through to this as well, and hopefully people can then start experiencing, and I think, especially in this day and age, we have become so distant with one another as well, especially when it comes to cuddling or touch. So people try and avoid that as much as possible. A lot of people even avoid a simple hug. And so hopefully people's mindset needs to change, and we need to get a little bit more think about a different type of interaction where a physical touch is on the prominent side of things.
Yeah, it's interesting because the touch itself, I 100% do agree with you. I personally do wish that we would have a more normal approach to touch in general in our society. However, it is a very complex topic because touch obviously is very powerful. It has a great ability to heal us. But on the other hand, it can also harm if it's not practiced in a safe environment. So if consent, in other words, mutual agreement, is not placed between two people, it can be hugely traumatic. And the other thing is that obviously amongst issues such as Me Too campaign that's been around around a few years, as well as the variation between cultures in terms of their approach to touch, it makes it a rather complex topic. However, when we look at our non-human primates, let's say for example chimpanzees, who actually differ only about 2% in our DNA, they spend around 20-25% of their day grooming each other. And grooming is obviously the human way is cuddling, and that's about 4 hours, 5 hours every single day. And if we think about that, it really, at least in my opinion, it kind of shows how important touch is as a form of communicating with each other, bonding with each other, and understanding each other. So yeah, it is something that I definitely think we would benefit having more. However, to get there, it needs to start from the grass level. So when we are, let's say, when you have a family and you have newborn babies, the way how the parents relate to the babies will almost set like a basis for the child in terms of how they will see touch or relate with touch later in their lives.
It's interesting how you spoke about the ground level, because I also believe that everything does start from the ground level, and most of our life, the way we live, is programming that has been set while we're growing up. So a lot of cultural differences fall into place, a lot of religious beliefs fall into place, and just the environment that you were brought up. So that makes a huge difference. So obviously it comes back to educating people and spreading awareness around this subject. I mean, so many other subjects, but this subject in particular. Talking about the grounding and just going back in time slightly. As you know, our podcast obviously, the mission and the vision around our podcast is vulnerability and just trying to make people that much more real. And just trying to understand, what has been going on in your life, and maybe a vulnerable aspect or something you would like to share with us that probably not many people know. What has been perhaps your lowest point in life?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Asim. I think that's a big question, and it's a very important one. First of all, when I think about vulnerability, to me, it means the ability to feel safe and be honest about my feelings and thoughts, not only with myself, because I can have vulnerability with myself, but also in relation with other people. And interestingly enough, that's actually the reason why I personally got interested in touch in the first place. So it actually was rather challenging for me to be very open and honest about my feelings a few years back before I started working on this field. And since then, touch has been actually the tool, at least for me. I'm not saying it has to be for everyone else, but it has helped me to be more honest and open and even brave in terms of my internal thoughts and feelings. So I would say that it's definitely, by talking about low points, I think that it took me a lot of vulnerability to actually swap from fashion industry, this is the industry where I used to work before, into cuddling and touch and hugs, which people obviously have all sort of different opinions and interpretations about. I felt that I kind of had to almost swallow my ego in some ways to realize that, after starting to work on something as innovative as what I'm doing right now, I will face a lot of different opinions and even hatred from some people. Obviously, luckily it hasn't been as intense as that, but definitely the feeling of realizing that what actually matters, who are the people and who are the people whose opinion matters to me the most, is actually, that is important to me. So yeah, I would say that vulnerability about realizing what are my values and my interests and sticking with them when there is obviously an opposition out there as well.
Honestly, I think you put it really nicely. First of all, you're a founder of a startup, so you obviously know it is probably the hardest thing anybody can go through in the business world. But I really have to commend you and congratulate you as well, because consciously, knowingly, you have picked a niche that would probably have a bad rap, or maybe negative publicity, or maybe a lot of maybe not hate comments. But yeah, it is already tough being a startup founder, but then your life probably because of the niche that you're in probably is that much harder. However, like I said, I really need to congratulate you, because consciously going into that takes a lot, so I just want to understand that, because a lot of people like playing it safe, and a lot of people might not have taken the decision that you have. What empowered you to take that decision, and what sort of a mind shift that you had for you to become so headstrong and keep going?
Sure, no, that's again another really good question. Going to the ground level, I think it really does or has to do with the intrinsic motivation aspect of the business that I'm doing. So I am truly passionate about the topic that I'm working on. So, for example, right now, because of the COVID-19, we are not able to run our business as usual. And instead, me and my co-founder, who actually has a master's degree in creative writing, we are starting to co-author or starting first draft of our upcoming book in the future, which is super exciting. And and why is it also exciting is because, hey, now I got all the time in my hands to read books about touch, which is my most interesting topic, and just take notes and do a bit of research and start collecting ideas. So it's definitely the genuine motivation and intrigue that I have around the topic. And this is what I've actually been thinking about of other startup founders. I always try to understand of other people like yourself, for example, that what is the main drive that pushes you to do what you do. Obviously I understand that as business owners we have to understand economy. We have to understand that it has to be money driven to a certain degree in order to survive in a capitalistic world, but at least for me it definitely is just a genuine interest. Probably I could be a researcher actually in the field if I wasn't doing what I'm doing. How about yourself? I'm now actually curious, what drives you to
be honest, I would echo exactly what you just said, because I honestly believe having a genuine interest and really believing in what you do is very important, because if you don't, it is just too hard of a journey to carry on with, because you will break sometime or the other. You'll always have challenges. Nature of challenges keep changing. Today you have COVID, tomorrow you have something else, and before this you had something else. But unless and until you don't have a strong belief, there's no way in hell that you can keep on going. So I completely agree with you that belief is very important. Believing in yourself, believing in whatever your mission and your product or your service is. And that is the only driving force. That's been my driving force with mental health. Obviously, mental health for me is very personal because of my mother. If you remember in Warwick as well, when we were together, I did touch upon that. Because my mother, suffered from severe depression and anxiety because of a failed marriage. The only thing that pulled her through was therapy, and now she's a therapist herself. So obviously, I was exposed to the whole mental health side of things and the importance of mental health. And yeah, just the passion of seeing is believing. And when you see your mother more than anybody else in this world getting better from a service or a product or anything or therapy for that matter, in our case, I just became the biggest believer. And for me it was, how can I now spread that with as many people as possible? So it all drives. And like you rightly said as well, yes, we're running a business and commercial aspect is very important. However, that can never be the driver, because if that is the driver, considering, especially the startup phase, in the, first couple of years, you're really not making anything. You're, either bootstrapping or you're just, trying to do whatever. So if money is the driver, then, you better stick to the 9 to 5 and, get a good job and progress from there. But it has to be beyond money. It has to be a service. And I honestly believe that money is always a byproduct of whatever you do. So focus on your service and money will always follow.
I agree to you 100%. Couldn't say it any better.
So, now we're talking about challenges. A lot of businesses are having a lot of challenges these days. We are maybe a little bit fortunate, unfortunately, due to the scenario, but we are in the mental health space and we're virtual, so we're not that much affected with the whole situation that is going on. However, there are many businesses, obviously, majority of the businesses have been impacted and affected, unfortunately, in a very unforeseen manner. And obviously, you are also one of those businesses. But again, I just wanted to understand that obviously every business is different. So the way you would strategize and, pivot in your business, or, you're working on a book or something else, every business would apply a different strategy. But in terms of mindset, what would you like to tell all the other entrepreneurs, or maybe even the people who are working for these teams? Maybe a lot of people have now let go on furlough, and unfortunately, maybe some people have lost their jobs. But what can you tell people during this time? How are you coping with this in your headspace? That is the most important question that I need to know.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. I think what I understand is that we are currently going through a collective trauma as a society, meaning that we are all exposed to an ongoing stress and uncertainty. And I think that I understand that people will have different responses to the situations. I've seen that some people might have a wider mental breakdown than others. Obviously, we all will feel the impacts to a certain degree. But what I personally think is that the more we actually practice to be in a calm state in our minds and in our bodies, in terms of by activating the body's rest and digest state, which is the opposite to the sympathetic fight or flight state, which the current COVID actually exposes us to. So in terms of practicing more mindfulness, practicing more acceptance, and trying to put things into a bigger scheme of things. So in order, like for example, in my point of view, I try to understand that this is now a phase that we are going through. It's most likely not going to last forever. If it would, that would be very strange if we look at history. No situation, no crisis has ever lasted forever. So at least for me, it helps to put it into a perspective that we will go through this, not only individually, but as a society. But definitely, again, putting the focus on your body. How do you feel with your emotions? How do you feel with your mental state, your mental health? And if you feel that you're struggling, finding the capacity to reach out to people, realizing that it's not a weakness to ask for help, because we all need it and we are all going through that together. So yeah, kind of accepting the vulnerability of ourselves, accepting that it's okay to not be able to perform as strongly as we would do in a regular life. But on the other hand, the ones who do, or who can still perform as usual, accepting that as well. It just shows that these people most likely have already previously probably even prioritize their own mental health and emotional well-being, so that when the crisis hits, you're more able to actually survive it. So yeah, this is just my 5 cents on this particular topic.
Fantastically put. To be honest, I couldn't have put it any better. Would you also say that being mindful of your current situation and accepting the current situation has now helped you to hopefully writing a book really soon? I mean, does that help you think out of the box and become more creative? Is that the driving force?
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, definitely. I actually say this it is a blessing, the situation in certain ways how we're going through, because I've also realized now how in my regular life I've been bombarded with different tasks, projects, and I've been kind of multitasking all the time without actually realizing that I'm seriously multitasking. So I kind of enjoy the clarity that this situation has brought to me. Yes, again, there might be moments of a little bit of uncomfortable feelings and uncertainty, but on the other hand, it has definitely helped me to reflect of things that actually matter. So what are the things that I can focus on and prioritize. And also actually post-COVID, I'm already saying like probably I could now use my time slightly differently when we go back to normal. And this kind of an insight would not have actually arrived without this unfortunate crisis. So yeah, I think there's always a silver lining, not to be too optimistic, but I think it's important because there is definitely a lot to learn and turn it around. How about yourself? How have you found that aspect of the situation?
We, like I said, we're probably on the other side of the crisis where, first of all, for our team, we've always been working remotely. So since we started our platform about 3.5 years ago, we started development. We've always been a remote team. So for us, technically, for the team, it's been business as usual because that's how we've been operating. And when it comes to our business itself, it has also been online. However, you're right when you said that, people who are in a scenario like mine, we did not have COVID, but we had that uncertainty. We had to also come out through that and to get used to the fact that every time, that we might never ever physically see our team members. What we're doing now is our reality. Yes. The video call that we're doing now collectively. So a lot of team members that I have in my team, I've never met them in person. But to accept that reality also took a little bit of time. Today we can easily say, yes, business as usual, but we have also gone through that transition. But also looking at the positives. For me, the positive was maybe it's a good thing that we're working remotely because now I've got people, recently I've hired somebody from Brazil. If we were not a remote team, I would have only worked in my 30-mile radius. So that also blocks you from, having a diverse team and having, all this creativity from all over the world. So I also try and see anything positive from every situation. That's just the way I've programmed myself. And I think that really helps me keep going, COVID or no COVID. But it's a very interesting thing that you said, which I was going to ask you anyway, when you spoke about post-COVID, because what generally happens, and you said this earlier on as well, if you go back in history, everything has passed and this shall also pass. And we all know that. But unfortunately, people also have a short-term memory. So the thing is, people, now it is all about COVID. Tomorrow, God forbid, there'll be something else. So people will forget about COVID and there'll be something new. But how can we now, for example, any good habits that we have now incorporated in our life, post-COVID, how, any suggestions, any ideas that you could give, or perhaps maybe you're going to use in your own life to perhaps keep that habit and not forget the time you're in today?
That's actually quite an interesting question because I'm immediately starting to reflect, obviously, if and have I actually created new, better habits as a result of the situation. And as I said, coming back to my previous point, that I think it's the fact that I'm slightly more mindful because I have more time actually in my hands. So I would like to bring that degree of clarity into my future as well. And I mean, clarity has always been an important aspect in the way that I try to think, or at least have it more in terms of making things easier to comprehend and prioritize. And it also helps me to allocate my actions correctly. So I would say that just increasing a little bit more a free time, like a silent time, just the time when I'm actually not obligated to think or do anything. In other words, it might be called as meditation. But I think as an entrepreneur, you are very much aware that is a very healthy habit to have. But in reality, how often do I actually get the time to do that? So I would say probably that to me personally, because the time when I'm not doing anything or not thinking anything is actually the most fruitful time as well, because it's almost like there are some thoughts or ideas or wishes, dreams and fears that are submerging from my unconsciousness that would not otherwise have the capacity to emerge. Not sure, but yeah, this is just some personal thoughts on the topic. And then on the other hand, also just consistency. I think that helps. Like personally, I like to have my habits. Even though it's COVID, I still like to wake up at the same time, open my laptop at the same time, start working on having my usual breaks, my walks, and so on. So in terms of creating the life that you want to live, I think consistency of healthy habits is the killer combination.
I couldn't agree with you more, especially when you spoke about consistency, because a lot of people, if it's meditation, if it's diet, if it's exercise, if it's working on a project, maybe writing a book, the problem, I believe, again, it's my personal opinion, but I believe a lot of people normally fail is because they are not able to be consistent in whatever they're doing. So not being too hard on yourself, and maybe if it's one baby step every single day, but take that baby step every single day, because being consistent is the only thing, in my opinion, which will get you through to the end line. I don't know if you agree on that.
I 100%, and I do agree with you with the fact as well that probably that is the biggest obstacle that people have when they're actually trying to reach their goals. It might sound like cliche, it might sound naive, it might sound too simple, but personally, I do think that has a lot to do with the reality. Everyone, we have the same hours, we have the same minutes in our days, and we get to decide how we use them.
Correct, absolutely. Well, Rebekka, I couldn't thank you enough for today. This was extremely insightful and really interesting, just to know about not just your business, but about yourself as well, and how you're coping with this scenario. And I'm sure it's going to help a lot of people who are listening today as well. Before I let you go, how can people find you, and how can people find your business?
Fantastic. So you can actually, the easiest way probably would be just to Google Nordic Cuddle, or Google my name, Rebekka Mikkola, or just type it down on Google, www.nordiccuddle.com. We also have social media, so it's easy to connect, and I hope to see some of you people who are listening on there, on virtual live. And thank you, by the way, Asim, so much for inviting. I truly enjoyed our conversation throughout as well. I think we should do this more often. And yeah, many thanks again for the conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much once again, Rebekka. Truly enjoyed it myself as well. And for everybody listening, you can find Rebekka. She's all over social media. Her company is also there. So yeah, hopefully, and best of luck with your book. We're all waiting for your book as well. Please give us more feedback on the book, and hopefully we can keep doing this, continue this conversation again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Asim, and I hope to see you soon. Take care for now.
Thank you so much. Take care. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.